Hi, everybody. Stephanie Haney here. Today, I have a very exciting guest to talk with, Danny Kravitz. He's one of the screenwriters on The Marksman, starring Liam Neeson, which was largely shot here in Ohio, and he's a hometown guy. So let's bring him in and talk to him all about that experience. Hi, Danny. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Danny, this is your first screenwrite credit on a major motion picture. How does it feel to have that experience come with a movie that topped the box office its first 2 weeks out?
Yeah, that felt really good. It felt good on a lot of levels. Like just getting a movie that you've written, just getting it made, that
Mm-hmm.
feels great, right? But then it's like okay, but it's being made by Robert Lorenz, this Oscar-nominated director behind all these amazing movies, and Liam Neeson, like your favorite actor, is starring in it, and then that's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then like yeah, it's at the top of the box office, and it opens and stays there for a couple weeks, and then we're still right at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and that means that people are liking it and they're telling other people about it, and that's probably the most rewarding, because you want to connect with an audience and stuff. So the whole experience is just wonderful.
And we'll talk more about the plot of the movie in just a moment. I watched it and definitely taken by surprise at some moments. But I want to talk about the fact that you're a Cleveland guy. Tell me about where you're from.
Yeah. So I grew up in Pepper Pike and went to Orange High School, and my parents still live in the house I grew up in Pepper Pike, and which was great because we filmed a lot of the movie there, most of the movie there. So being able to be home to visit with my family and then run off to the movie set to watch Liam Neeson act in this script, it was awesome. It's great. I love Cleveland, and I love that I'm still that I'm from Cleveland. I still consider myself a Clevelander. I do.
It's one of those things that just stays with you. Where are you living now? Where's home right now?
So I live in Chicago. I live in the city. Even though I'm in the film business, I really like the Midwest. I travel to LA and stuff, but I do a lot of my work from the Midwest.
That's true. LA is great, New York is great, but there's nothing quite like the Midwest. I'll say
Yeah,
that for you.
yeah.
So, the movie, The Marksman, this is an action film, yes, but it's also got political undertones. We see Liam Neeson's character, Jim Hansen. First, he's kind of indifferent to this mother and son, the son Miguel, that's played by Jacob Perez. They enter the U.S. illegally on his land, and they're trying to escape being murdered by a drug cartel. But then this switch kind of flips for him, and he's worried about the system. He's worried about the difficulty of seeking asylum, complicated by the fact that his stepdaughter, Sarah, played by Catherine Winnick, she works for Border Patrol. How did you come up with that setup for this backstory?
So my writing partner, Chris Charles, he came to me, and this goes back, about 10 years when we first started working on this script. He came to me and he said, Danny, I got to tell you about what's going on down at the border, on the Arizona-Mexico border. There's really interesting things. It's a conflict. There's a lot of conflicts there. It's interesting and it's important. And I said, okay, let's dig into this a little bit. And the region itself had a lot of, like I said, conflict and really interesting human stories going on. And so we were able to latch onto very quickly. It just kind of happened. We latched onto these characters. Like, what if someone who's really in need, like an illegal immigrant little boy fighting for his life, what if he runs into a man, the Jim Hansen uh, character played by Liam? What if he runs into a man who lives on the border who also has his own, more personal struggles? He's not as oppressed by what's happening around him as this young boy, but he's definitely oppressed and he's suffering his own ways. What would happen if these two unlikely people came together? And from there, the story kind of grew and turned into this very rich human story with this backdrop of this really kind of fragile and conflict filled area. And then, of course, it became this story about how do they end up helping each other, which was perfect, and again, the human story kind of guided us. But the original thought was, and it wasn't that well known back then what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it all played out.
And this is, of course, an action movie, but there were some tender moments in there that really, really caught me. I was feeling it. I was like, oh.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think, people went into this not quite knowing what it would be, and we wanted to, to play with the genre a little bit because it is an action thriller for sure. But that human story was so, like I said, it was just so rich. And when we were working on it, we kept saying to ourselves, people are going to think this is like an action film, and then they're going to walk out of there and they're going to be hopefully really moved. And I too, like when I watched it on the big screen, finally, I was deeply, deeply moved. And then I just thought, and actually, I saw it in the theaters recently with people, safely. Everyone was masked and distanced.
Mm-hmm.
But to see the audience reacting in that way too, a lot of people were really moved. And it was, I liked that it was a surprise for people like you to see it and realize, oh my gosh, there's some depth to this.
It certainly was. Now let's talk for a moment about the process of getting this movie made. How did you and your co-screenwriter, Chris Charles, and as you said, Robert Lorenz, who also has a screenwrite credit but directed the film, how did you link up with this? How did you land the movie with Open Road Films? And how did you get Liam Neeson attached?
Yeah, it's a great story because, as you probably know, it's incredibly difficult to get a movie made at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we first wrote the script, it was actually received very well in Hollywood right away. But the process of getting it ultimately made, so much depends really on those attachments, getting a director and then an actor who's a star or a great actor involved. And so we kind of went through a lot of different directors and big stars, and they'd get attached and then something would happen, and it's that, kind of almost cliche story. But when Rob Lorenz came on board, he read the script. His agent gave him the script and he read it, and he really liked it. And once he came on board, since he's produced and directed at such a high level with so many, really accomplished people in Hollywood, he gave the project its momentum and its gravitas, and then he was instrumental. And he also came on and started improving the script with us. So he made some really nice adjustments and improvements to the script. And then he ultimately went to Liam and he said, I got the script, and Liam read it. And Liam's reaction, I'm learning more about this as I'm watching Liam do interviews and stuff for the movie. And I on set, we talked about this a little bit too, but he really reacted to the story on this deep human level because he's also an immigrant. And he was really moved by that. He liked the story, but emotionally, I think it resonated with him. He thought it was an important story to tell. And once he agreed, then things moved fairly quickly. And to their credit, so Open Road is a distribution company that works with Raven Capital and Sculptor Media. They're the production companies. And they saw it, even before Rob and Liam came on board, they saw like this could be a great movie. So with their support, they got Rob, and then Rob gets Liam, and then we're off to the races.
It's just kind of one of those snowball situations. You get the one, and it keeps going and going.
Yeah. But then you hope it keeps snowing because it could easily like just turn sunny and 90 one day, and everything melts, and you're like, what happened? That happens all the time.
Which, if you're in Northeast Ohio right now, that sounds good, but in this situation, that would not be good.
Right? Wouldn't that be great right now? Because this is cuckoo weather. This is cuckoo. We are like buried. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Luckily that did not happen. And again, I think really, I can't say enough about Rob Lorenz. If you saw the movie, like it's really, he's like an auteur director, and he really stuck to the vision. But in addition to that, he just did a lot of things behind the scenes to get the movie made. And I owe him and Liam. I just feel like it's such a debt of gratitude to them, and Jacob too, the little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant performance.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely a must-see from him. So powerful. There's a surprise from him not too far into the movie, and I was shocked. I was like, okay, this is going to be a different situation now. So you got to watch the movie. I'm not going to give it away. There's definitely a surprise from him.
You can keep me from giving stuff away because, like, you're better at this than I am. I tend to make mistakes and be like, oops, I gave it away.
Guess we'll be zipping our lip on that one. So we now know Liam Neeson came along later. Did you write the script with any particular actor in mind?
So we had a short list of actors, and Liam was one of them. In that age group, there's only a handful of people that, when you're having like your dream fantasy list of people who can play this part, some actors just, enter into your head and you want them. So he was absolutely one of them. I have always been a huge fan. And, I love the Taken movies. They're fun because he makes them. He's good at that stuff. Like he's fierce and awesome, but he's also this sensitive actor. Like in the movie Kenzie, and then in Love Actually, like those are two of my favorite movies that he's in. So he really was kind of at the top of that list. Um, and then I realized just how lucky I was when he actually was cast, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be a real performance, like an honest, natural. And you saw from the movie, like it's very raw. It's like it's some of the rawest stuff I've seen him do on film.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
I forgot for a moment about Love Actually. Liam Neeson in Love Actually is great. I love that movie.
he's the best. So I have a lot of favorite moments, but one of my favorite moments in that movie is when he's carrying, tragically in that movie at the beginning of the movie, he's lost his wife and he's carrying her casket, and there's just this moment, and he gives kind of in the style of that movie. It's a love comedy movie, but it has moments of earnest and heartfelt sorrow. He has this moment where he's grieving, and it's just for a moment, and you see it, and it was just so natural and beautiful, and sad. And then the rest of the movie, he's having a lot of fun, and it's charming too. But those are the little things that you look for when you're thinking about people who can deliver on every level.
Hmm. And we see in this movie, in The Marksman, we see the character's flaws. We do. The character is not perfect the entire time. We definitely see more than him just running and throwing and punching and shooting things. We see some very vulnerable moments from him.
Did you like that?
I did. It did. It really, like you said, it made it real. It brought the humanity to the story.
Yeah. Yeah, for me too. I mean, he is, like I said about Taken, when he has to be like tough, there's no one who I'd rather, like, I want to stand behind him at any time there's danger,
Mm-hmm.
So cool. But yeah, really a sweet, and he's a sweet man, it comes through. Really, really sweet man.
It definitely comes through on screen for sure. Now let's talk about where the movie was shot here in
Okay.
Northeast Ohio. A lot of it right here in Lorain, Portage County, in Chardon. And this was all done pre-pandemic, by the way. So a normal set, everyone interacting, all of that good stuff. What was it like being on set with this cast, with this crew, with these characters?
Yeah, it was really dreamy. It was great. It happened to be, one of those sets where everyone is really passionate about the film. The cast and the crew in particular were just happy and excited about the project. So there was this really, really great energy. The being in Ohio, it's aesthetically it's beautiful, and so there was just this fall Cleveland gorgeousness happening, and that was the energy too. And then in terms of watching, the film being made, watching Liam and Jacob and Rob and Mark Patton, the cinematographer, watching them work. As a screenwriter, you don't always get to be up close for that stuff, and certainly with your first film, I wouldn't say it's common. And my partner and I got that privilege, and it was amazing. Like watching Liam Neeson and Jacob bring these characters to life. In like you said, there's in the fun action scenes, but also in the tender moments between them, or the kind of really nuanced emotional scenes between them. It was like a masterclass, watching a masterclass in acting, and then seeing it come to life again too, from like looking through the monitors and seeing the way it's lit and seeing the way Rob is directing it. It takes what's been in your head for like 10 years, and it's in your head. It's kind of like stick figures a little bit, and it's like not really lit. It's kind of black and whitish, and then it just comes alive like you're in a dream. And I remember the first day I was on set, and it was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And it was shot at this like old airport, like a private little airstrip, and I was just in heaven. I actually called my students from the set because I also teach some screenwriting classes at Clement College, Chicago, and I was like, I'm here. I was just so excited. I was like a little kid in a candy store. So
Right.
it was really neat.
Now, we've talked about it a few times here. We've brought up the movie Taken. The Marksman has been compared to Taken, which makes sense. It's only natural because Liam is such a big association with that series. Did that enter into your mind at all once you realized it was going to be Liam starring in this movie as you went through the process of actually getting it done, getting it filmed?
So that's such a great question. Interestingly, it didn't initially, partly because I was overwhelmed with the thrill of like, oh my gosh, Liam who and though I'm familiar with and do very much enjoy the Taken movies, I was more familiar with, like I said, Kinsey and Love Actually and Schindler's List. So it didn't occur to me right away. But then once it did, I was like, oh my gosh, if anyone can do the action thriller part of this movie, like he can do it better than anyone. So that was also like, yeah, we got the guy. We got the guy that can do this.
What a great feeling going into making your movie. I can't even imagine. That sounds incredible.
It was it was better than I thought it would ever feel. It was good. It's still good. It's just still so fun and rewarding. I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate.
Well, it's a great film. I highly recommend that people go out and see it. Now, without giving too much away, I've got to ask, are there any particular moments, again, no spoilers here, Danny,
Okay.
are there any moments in the film that are your personal favorites where we can watch for that and say, okay, that's Danny right there?
Yes, I think there are, and I think I can explain it in a way that won't give anything away. So,
Okay.
or won't give anything away that isn't already given away in the trailers and stuff. So, as we know, this young boy loses his mother at the beginning of the story, and Liam makes this commitment. The Jim Hansen character played by Liam makes this commitment. He's gonna take him to his family in Chicago. It's his mother's wish, and he kind of agrees reluctantly, but he knows in his heart it's the right thing to do. And this thing happens because this young boy is taken. It grows up in this world where violence is common and sees violence before the movie starts and during the movie. He's at this age where innocence is right. It's right about to shift from youth into adolescence and adulthood, and his innocence is on the line. And there's a subtle little subplot that starts to evolve throughout the story where he's contemplating revenge or having feelings of revenge because his mother was killed. And he comes from a place where that's how you're exposed to that kind of thinking, especially with the cartels who are the bad guys in the movie. And Liam's character very subtly starts to recognize this and very suddenly tries to steer him away from that. It's not overdone, but he sees that what's at stake for this kid is not just his life, because these bad guys are chasing them, but his soul is kind of at stake too, because if he loses his innocence and turns kind of to a darker path, that's a problem. And so there's a couple scenes where that plays out along the way, but then in the climax, there's some stuff that happens that finally kind of, he's not just protecting his life, he's saying to him, your soul, your innocence is really what's I'm trying to protect. And you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
You've seen it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That gets me. I mean, that was so important to me when we wrote it. And that's the part that really resonates for me a lot.
So the message here is watch till the end. Stick
Yes.
around to the end, because then you'll really see that sort of how that all plays out ultimately.
And isn't the end so delicious? Like, just in terms of movie watching, like, doesn't it just get you?
Mm-hmm. It is. I was on the edge of my seat for sure. I was watching it late last night, and I was like, "How am I going to go to bed now?"
Yeah, I'm still kind of haunted by the beauty of the ending. I mean, it's very intense, obviously, in the climax, but there's some things that happen after that are just so moving. And again, I didn't direct it, so I can kind of gush about it. It's like Rob and Liam and Mark and Jacob.
Lots of great stuff there. More than just the surface level plot, for sure. We've really kind of dived into that a little bit. Now, The Marksman, as you said, it's still in the top 5 films at the box office now in week 5. Do you know anything about any streaming plans? Because, there are some people who aren't maybe comfortable going to the theaters right now, but want to see this movie. Any idea for us there? I
do, yeah. And so for people who want to watch this at home, it should be coming out on home video probably late March.
Okay.
What they'll do, it'll stay in theaters as long as people are enjoying it and seeing it in the theaters, and then it'll shift to a platform where you can order it at home. You can just rent it at home, and that'll be for a very long time. It'll come out on Redbox and DVD, and there'll be a lot of options for people to be able to see it at home. It won't be streaming right away like a Netflix kind of thing. It'll be more of like, you flip on Apple TV or Prime or whatever, where you just order it and rent it or something.
Your on-demand rental kind of situation.
Yes. And I can't wait for that too, because there are so many people that are waiting to see it at home, and I think it'll be wonderful. I would tell people, watch it on the biggest TV that you can, because it's got some beautiful imagery and stuff.
It really does. Very beautiful landscape shots, lots going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a modern Western, you know?
It really is. And I really enjoyed it. Danny, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you telling us. We love to see the Cleveland guy doing the big things. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was really a treat for me, so thank you.
Right now, you can still catch The Marksman in theaters, and you heard it right here. It'll be available online in some kind of rental capacity soon. Find out more on WKYC.com. This is Stephanie Haney for 3 News.